night of June 21st, 2019, my wife and I were driving in our bright orange Jeep when I got a call from the governor of the state of Mississippi. He was calling me because he was afraid that the head of a state agency that reported to him was taking a kickback. The head of the agency was a man named John Davis, and his agency was important. It's called the Department of Human Services, or DHS, and it hands out welfare money in Mississippi. In our state, that meant tens of millions of dollars. Bryant had been told that a check for one of the vendors to DHS was actually going to a P.O. box owned by John Davis. That looked fishy. It looked like maybe the vendor was trying to pay Davis in exchange for a contract with DHS. So we started an investigation. By we, I mean the Office of the State Auditor. My team and I at the auditor's office are in charge of investigating fraud involving taxpayer money. And using that tip about the potential bribe, we started an investigation that ultimately led to uncovering the largest public fraud scheme in the history of the state of Mississippi. Here's how it happened. Back in 2016, John Davis met with a woman named Nancy New, an influential Mississippian who ran a nonprofit. They struck a deal. John would give Nancy a big grant of welfare funds, and Nancy agreed to use it to improve the welfare of families in the state, and that's legal. But what happened next is not. Nancy and her son Zach would, over the next 3 years, receive tens of millions of dollars in welfare money, and sometimes they spent that on projects that were allowable, and sometimes they did not. For example, John Davis handed the News a lot of welfare money, and then asked Nancy and Zach to spend some of it on John's friend named Brett DiBiase, a former professional wrestler. The News claimed to auditors they paid to send Brett to learn how to teach classes about drug addiction. But my team discovered they actually used welfare money to send Brett to a resort in Malibu to be treated for drug addiction. Lies like this were the tip of the iceberg, though. Over the course of the next several months in 2019, we pored over documents and uncovered millions of dollars of misspent welfare funds. Then, in December of 2019, my office learned DHS was planning on handing even more money to Nancy and Zach's nonprofit. We had to act decisively. In January, we felt we had enough proof to approach a prosecutor with our findings. That month, I also told the lead federal prosecutor in our area about the case. And on February 5th, my team arrested the first 6 culprits in the DHS welfare scheme. The indictment shocked the nation. The indictments revealed millions in fraud, including money to an experimental concussion treatment company in which Brett Favre was an investor. Now, remember, my office does not have the ability or the authority to prosecute crimes. We rely on prosecutors to do that. Together, we put a stop to the misspending. I also wanted to make sure the public knew that this case would be fully investigated all the way. So I turned every piece of evidence we had over to the FBI. The same month we arrested the first DHS culprits. The FBI and federal prosecutors asked that they be allowed to take the lead on indicting anyone new beyond those first 6 people. I agreed to assist them however they liked, since they had more resources than my state agency. Then came our big audit that described, for the first time, where all this welfare money went. Again, the country was shocked. We found welfare money spent on lobbyists, John Davis's family members, a speeding ticket for Nancy New, cars for Nancy's family, a house for Nancy, travel costs for a family of professional wrestlers, beauty pageants, a volleyball court, over $1 million to Brett Favre's company for speeches which he never gave, and on and on and on. If you want all the details about where the money went, you can visit this website to access our audit. Prosecutors went to work with our evidence. Over the next 3 years, from 2020 to 2023, John Davis pleaded guilty. Nancy New pleaded guilty, Zach New pleaded guilty, Brett DiBiase pleaded guilty, and others. The FBI did their own investigation too, into new people beyond the first 6 folks we arrested. Federal prosecutors in the Biden administration used our evidence for their own prosecutions. And the new leadership of the Department of Human Services used our audit to sue dozens of people to get your money back. Some of these court cases are still happening. But as the government's attorneys make final decisions about who will be held accountable, I wanted to explain to you how the biggest public fraud scheme in state history happened and how it was uncovered. In short, it was uncovered and stopped because a group of dedicated investigators and auditors in my office and a local district attorney took on some of the most powerful people in the state, and the federal prosecutors helped plumb the case to its depths, making the final decisions about who goes to jail. And so, to the men and women of the Office of the State Auditor, who put a stop to a public fraud scheme that likely cost taxpayers more than $100 million, I say thank you. And to you, the taxpayers, who let me hold this position, thank you for letting me serve you.